We thank the Universal Peace Federation, the much-loved leader Dr. Hak Ja Moon, the spirit and legacy of the late Reverend Sam Myung Moon, founder of UPF and its successful global outreach, and its outstanding president, Dr. Thomas Walsh. Excellencies, friends, at the opening ceremony of the 2018 Olympics here, several days ago, the North and South Korean athletes marched together behind a blue and white unification flag for the first time in more than a decade. It was an emotionally charged historic moment which sends a powerful signal that peace, though it may be difficult, elusive, and distant, is not impossible. We in the UPF and the International Association of Parliamentarians for Peace applaud Pyongyang's leader, Kim Jong-un, for sending a high-level delegation, including his sister, Kim Jong-jong, to the Pyeongchang Olympics, and for perhaps creating the beginnings of the Seoul-Pyongyang informal or formal talks. These laudable gestures have raised hopes for peace and reconciliation in the Korean Peninsula. We equally commend South Korean President Moon Jae-in for his vision, for his leadership, and for his initiative in carving out a new path to signal better relations between the two Koreas. We hope that the North and South Korea display of unity in the Pyeongchang Olympics will be built upon and serve as a harbinger of a new chapter in political and economic engagement in the Korean Peninsula, and to quote President Moon Jae-in, a precious starting point for a step towards world peace. In 2006, Excellencies, friends, in my own humble contribution to helping encourage direct talks between Seoul and Pyongyang, I transferred from Manila to Seoul the Secretariat of the International Conference of Asian Political Parties, which we founded and established in Manila in September 2000, and which I'm now chairman of its standing committee up to now. The IAPP Secretariat is now most active in Seoul and headed by Secretary General Park Ryu-byung, experienced South Korean diplomat, and by my co-chairman, now National Security Advisor Chung Wei-hyun. I am proud to inform you that since we formed IAPP here in Seoul and in Manila in 2000, IAPP now counts some 350 ruling, opposition, and independent political parties from 52 countries in Asia, and the Korean Workers' Party of North Korea is a member of IAPP. Excellencies, friends in Northeast Asia today, we need to develop pragmatic and creative methods that will try to rebuild North-South relations in the Korean Peninsula without hopefully allowing too many of the ideological differences to get in the way. My interest in such an outcome is personal as well as professional, because my earliest voluntary errands in Philippine foreign policy involved North Korea in 1990. I visited Pyongyang as then acting chairman of the House Committee on Foreign Relations in a pioneering effort to try to open Philippine diplomatic North Korean relations and to try to discourage it from giving material support to the Communist Party in the Philippines. Despite his forbidding reputation, I found that the legendary Kim Il-sung, widely and keenly interested in the outside world. Our appointment of 10 minutes stretched for more than 1 hour as we exchanged views on many issues. When I inquired into the possibility of another war on the Korean Peninsula, he dismissed the liability outright. Conflict, he said, would be foolish. It would only cause mutual destruction in both North Korea and South Korea, the president of North Korea said. In no uncertain terms, he told me, quote, and I quote him, if we attack the South, The South will be destroyed. But we in the North, he said, will also be destroyed. Thus, when Pyongyang, with leader Kim Jong-un, his grandson, and previously his son Kim Jong-il, rattled the sounds of war in the Korean Peninsula, I remember those words of practical wisdom from the late Kim Il-sung. And on my invitation, President Kim Il-sung sent to Manila a few weeks later after I left Pyongyang his deputy, Prime Minister Kim Dal-yoon, to finalize the agreement with our then Foreign Secretary Raul Manglapus, which expeditiously resulted in diplomatic relations between Korea and the Philippines. This was the most successful result of our trip to North Korea. Excellencies, friends, we must point out that despite the occasional harsh rhetoric on both sides of the 38th parallel, I believe governments, parliaments, political parties, civil society organizations, and religious groups must encourage and support direct talks between Seoul and Pyongyang, assisted by the United States of America. Indeed, direct talks between North and South will complement these high-level explorations. Today, the basic fact is that the distribution of power in the world is fast changing, particularly in East Asia, and the Korean Peninsula must adapt to these epochal transformations. Vietnam itself, from 3 difficult successive wars, I lived in Vietnam for 4 years during the war, winning against great powers, and its socialist government adopting a market economy, lifted its people from poverty to become today a rising, peaceful economic power. North Korea can be like Vietnam, which is already emerging as a power in Southeast Asia. The great example, of course, is how the two Germanys finally emerged from Cold War confrontation and totally united under then Chancellor Helmut Kohl to become today the predominant economic power in Europe. And China, under the unforgettable leadership of Deng Xiaoping, opened China to the world, lifted more than 500 million people from poverty, and introduced appreciable elements of free enterprise capitalism to China's socialist economy, which has propelled China to the second largest in the global economy, second only to the United States, and perhaps soon in the next 10 years, number 1. Perhaps the two Koreas, Excellencies, should begin with some degree of economic cooperation. And the obvious way, which is, of course, should not take too much time for Pyongyang to be invited to associate itself with the East Asian economic grouping of the 10 Southeast Asian states and the 3 Northeast Asian states, China, Japan, and South Korea. The ASEAN plus 3 could become ASEAN plus 4. This should not be a long process, and the idea should be shared with Pyongyang sooner than later. This can begin as early as next month, if we want it. Yes, indeed, North Korea should not be left alone and isolated as we push for political and economic integration in Asia. In my view, the immediate task of the parliaments and mainstream political parties of the Republic of Korea and the Communist Korean Workers' Party of the North, aided by the parliaments, political parties, civil society, and business leaders of the global community, is to draw up a clear, distinct, and workable roadmap towards Korean unification. Political parties and civil society organizations should network with the leading think tanks of Asia, Europe, and the U.S. to envision the architecture of Korean confederation and unification, actively revive Seoul's Kim Dae-jung Sunshine Policy, promote a bipartisan approach among the major powers of the South, and draw on South Korea's vaunted economic power to help build the economy of the North under an economic and political confederation of Korean unity. The Asian, European, African, Latin American, Australian, and U.S. parliaments could organize a program and send delegations to the North Korean legislature, their ministers of agriculture and tourism, might interact with the North Korean counterparts to look into the recurring causes of famine in the North and develop jobs creating and foreign exchange earning tourism here. The late Reverend Moon, mind you, and Madam Moon, over the years have built genuine goodwill in Pyongyang and among the Koreans in the North and donated their much appreciated valuable hotel and erstwhile automobile factory in North Korea and donated it there to the North Korean government and people. Excellencies, let's give the applause to Father and Mother Moon. We believe that the lingering conflict and potentially dangerous flashpoint in the Korean Peninsula with North Korea, now nuclear armed, and we urge the revival of the long-standing, long-postponed six-party talks among the U.S., Russia, China, Japan, South Korea, and North Korea, and better sustained direct talks between the North and South that would directly contribute to enhancing political stability and security, not only in the Korean Peninsula, but also in the Asia-Pacific region, but most importantly, lead to unite the two Koreas, forswear war, and together build a strong, united, prosperous, first world nation for the Korean peoples in the third and second of the 21st century. Perhaps the successful dynamics of North Korea's nuclear development could be channeled to economic mobilization. Excellencies, friends, before I close, let me just say that the Sunnis and the Shiites in the Middle East and Africa have been killing each other, one led by Iran, the Shiites, and one led by Saudi Arabia in the south. I think the time has come. This unity for peace that we speak of here in Korea could also be the subject for peace in the Persian Gulf. The bloody Catholic Protestant conflicts in Europe that ran for centuries have long since ended, and the latest achievement being the relatively recent Good Friday Peace Agreement that ended the brutal political, religious, Catholic Protestant wars in Northern Ireland. Excellencies, friends, I just have 1 more minute and a half. Today, we sadly note the most discouraging ongoing multiple crises in our region, the extremist violence and wars in Iraq, Syria, although we have seen recent improvement and new hostilities in Libya, the continuing violence in Afghanistan, the unresolved Palestinian-Israeli conflict, the unending Azerbaijan and Armenia conflict over Nagorno-Karabakh, the continuing dangers and fear of explosion in the Korean Peninsula, the Buddhist and Muslim Rohingya difficulties in Myanmar, similar problems in southern Thailand, the maritime tensions in the South China Sea and East China Sea, the Muslim and communist insurgencies in the Philippines, and the other conflict areas in our region. On our part, I must say that we must strive relentlessly then to achieve the multicultural understanding, which is the only basis for the long-term security of our Asian region and the global community. For understanding among the great civilizations is the only global peace, for global peace that will endure. Indeed, to this purpose, we must mobilize mosques, churches, temples, synagogues, Buddhists, Hindus, Confucians, and Jews, no less than the Christians and Muslims, as well as political parties and the whole of global society. And there are still historical grudges that remain. Let us bring them into the open, indeed, into the blazing searchlight of public scrutiny, if you will, so that they may be stressed out, they may be traced
Mr. Speaker,
and compromise. Excellencies, I am ending in 5 seconds.
I'm sorry, time is up, and
I have 5 seconds, Mr. President. I must say that here in North Korea and South Korea, we must appeal to both North and South. We must send a South Korean delegation to the North. And North Korea already sent the sister of their leader to the south. I beg God that in His own good time, He will make it happen, that there will be two delegations meeting here in this great National Assembly of the Republic of Korea. Inspired by Father Moon and the legacy that he kept and brought about when he established the Universal Peace Federation, I say that someday and soon we shall have the two Koreas meeting here in joint assembly, in joint peace, both houses of Congress of North Korea and South Korea meeting here in this assembly in Seoul. Thank you and good day.